In this next tutorial, we'll be examining the Properties panel. And in the last video, we saw how some of the panels that we work with on the side were very advantageous to us with regards to keeping ourselves organized. The Properties panel is defaulted down at the bottom of your Dreamweaver workspace. And notice, like any other panel, if you double-click on it, it can be collapsed for more space. And just single-clicking on it will expand it once again. First thing you'll notice inside of these panels are the ability to access either HTML elements or CSS elements. There are two tabs associated with the Properties window. Well, first and foremost, let me mention that the file that I've opened up here, this index.html page, happens to be located in your source files in the Chapter 2 folder. And it is just the index.html page that is located there. So if you want to follow along, you can go to File, Open, and you can open up that file wherever it happens to be located. And you'll see in mine, it's in the source files, and you'll see here Chapter 2, Killer Sites, index.html. So I'm going to open that up, and that's what we have right here. So as you'll notice, I'm in the design view, and that's just showing me what the design looks like. And when you're working inside of Dreamweaver's WYSIWYG design view, this is where the properties window is probably going to be the easiest thing for you to work with. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that some of these HTML elements have already been formatted. For example, if you select anything in your design view, the Properties window will give you a brief indication of what's going on. So we can see here that this selected area is being formatted as a H3. There's no ID associated with it, although there is a class associated with it, this CSS class. And when you click on the CSS class, you can see how you could apply any number of different classes with it as well. There's also the opportunity to make things bold or italic, to create unordered or ordered lists, to remove block quotes or to add block quotes, and also to create links out of your selected elements. Now we're going to get into links a little bit later on in another video, but just to let you know, these are all things that are possible inside the Properties window. Let's scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll see that there is some formatting that I've removed, and here it just says another subheadline. If you select that, you'll see that there is no formatting being set to this. However, if I did want it to look like the other headline 3s that I have here, I'd just come in here and I would format this as a heading 3. And there you go. Now, if we were to format that as a heading 2 or a heading 1, that might look a little bit different than what we are looking for. So I'm going to keep it as a heading 3 so we could see what the rest of it looks like. Let's also do this. If I were to check out in the split screen view, you'll notice that what Dreamweaver is doing is by formatting this in your design view, it's changing what's going on in the code view. So if I were to say none again, you would see that there are no tags associated with another subheadline. However, if we put it back to H3, Dreamweaver's done a nice job of nesting the open and closing H3 tags in between our another subheadline. So that's a really great way of working. I'm going to go back to the design view up here in the top left-hand corner. And now I'm going to select, for example, maybe this little piece of text right here. It doesn't really matter which piece of text you're selecting. I'm just giving you an example. And let's imagine that we wanted this to be bold. I could just come in here and click on bold. And when I do that, you'll see that this little bit of text is in fact bolder than the rest. If I were to highlight that and go into my code view, you could just go into split screen or code view alone. Whatever is working for you is fine. And notice if I were to select this, you would see that what that bold tag actually did was to create strong tags in between or around our selected text. If I were to come in here and select another piece of text, and let's say I wanted it to be italicized, well, you'll notice that that's created the emphasis tag that we have right here. And that's fine, and it looks great. You can even select it and make it both bold and emphasized at the same time. However, that's not really what I want to do, so just select the text again and remove the bold setting that we applied, and you'll notice that in the code view, that is going to be affected in exactly the same way. So these are really advantageous ways of working inside of the Dreamweaver environment, especially in the WYSIWYG design view. Let's also take a moment to look at the Properties Window's CSS tab. When you do click on this, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of different elements that are available to you. Now, the only problem about working in this fashion is that when you are making changes to CSS, that can change things on a global website perspective. And what that means is, if you're familiar with CSS, you should know that having certain style sheets controlling how the entire website looks, any changes that you make to one of those CSS elements will affect other files as well. So you'll notice if I were to target this headline here, it says article H3. That's the targeted rule. So it'll give you information about what's in the cascade. You can create a new CSS rule if you wanted to, or an inline style. However, inline styles are not generally the best way of creating your CSS, but it can be advantageous in certain situations. Or you can apply an existing class. You can remove classes or apply existing classes. I'm just going to click out because those are not what I want to do. And you'll notice here that there are font lists. If you wanted to change what that font was, you can come in here and you can change exactly what those fonts are just by clicking on the arrow, and you can choose from a different set of lists, or you could edit a font list, and these are also elements that you can sort of work with. Size of that font can be changed as well. However, I'm reluctant to do that in this area simply because I know that if I were to change what one of these things look like here, what that's also going to do is change what all the other headlines are going to look like as well. So, even though I can come in here and say, hey, let's change this to 22, or in this case, as you can see, it says 2. That's made it extremely small. But if I were to say something like 22, well, I accidentally had that selected. So I'm just going to Control Z on the PC or Command Z on the Mac and bring that back. But notice if I were to make that something more ridiculous, like 42 or something like that, that would change what all of these headlines look like. And I'm kind of reluctant to do that. Also, you could edit an existing rule. So if I had positioned my cursor right inside here, I don't have to select it necessarily, but if I go to Edit Rule, that'll open up your CSS rule definitions and allow you to make changes there. We'll be getting into these CSS rule definitions much later on, and when we do so, you'll become more familiar with what's happening. So while the Properties window is a wonderful means of selecting elements and making changes within your text, I generally will sort of persuade you to use the HTML section and tab more than the CSS one. When we want to get into CSS styling, we'll do so by accessing either the CSS styles over here, or I'll actually access the CSS style right up here, and I can go to the code view and make changes directly inside that CSS style sheet myself just by typing them in. However, Dreamweaver allows us the opportunity to do different things, and we'll be seeing how we can do those in the next video.